someone else had a mental health problem before, so of course no one's going to believe them when they come up with this crazy story. And what is it happening again, baby? Like, what's going on? Modern video games have really spoiled us, where when you die, you just kind of reset to a certain place. I need the thrill and the horror of Mario and only having 3 lives and worrying about beating the whole game just with that. That situation is very similar to the protagonist in this week's movie, Every Time I Die. Hey everybody, and thank you for joining me for yet another episode of the Everyman Movie Review. We are back on our normal schedule of movies, although this week we're going to do one that's a little older, but still available on streaming. As per usual, I'm going to tell you about the people in the movie, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the movie, and then at the end, I will wrap with my recommendations, so make sure you stick around. So Every Time I Die was a movie that I watched a few months ago now, probably at the start of quarantine, and we're still kind of starved for material, we're looking for movies, and I thought, hey, let's go back to this. And you know why? Because I got reminded of it when I watched Palm Springs. If you haven't checked out the review for Palm Springs, make sure you do that. It's available right here. And I say it reminded me because it's not the same as Palm Springs. It's not that Groundhog Day-esque kind of feeling, but it's got some of the same principles, I guess, at work. I'll get into more of that in just a bit. But before I do, let's get through the pleasantry, shall we? Every Time I Die was directed by Robbie Michael. It was written by Gal Katzir and Robbie Michael. It is starring Marc Menchaca as Jay. And I'll say I've seen Marc in a few things, but this role was way different than the stuff I've seen him in before. If you've checked out Ozarks, then you know who I'm talking about. He's the kind of like the head of the family of kind of like the trailer park people that Jason Bateman kind of gets involved with through the daughter. Michelle Macedo as Poppy, Leah Johnson as Sam's mother, Tyler Fleming as Tyler, Melissa Macedo as Mia, and Drew Fontiero as Sam. So Every Time I Die is the story of Sam, the protagonist. Now you may have noticed I mentioned him last in the characters, and that's because he's the one we see for the least amount of time on screen. Now that seems strange. How can he be the protagonist if we see him the least time on screen? Well, that's because Sam is murdered while out at a cabin with his girlfriend and her sister and some of their friends. And once he's murdered, his consciousness then transfers to another member of the party as he tries to solve not only his murder and figure out who did it, but stop that murderer and protect the other members of his party, and along the way, learn the truth about himself. So basically in the first few minutes of the movie, we're just getting to know the friends and kind of their dynamic with each other, and there's no real giveaway early in about someone about to die or who is going to be the killer. Now we know Sam is, just based on the movie description, the synopsis, and the fact that I just told you that. So I suppose that is a bit of a spoiler, sorry, but we can't really talk about the movie at all unless we get into that. So after his murder, Sam then hops to another member of the party, but he doesn't know at first that he's not himself. He's confused about the fact that people don't see Sam when he is talking to them, and they think that the other person has gone crazy and is channeling Sam. Not everybody knows at first that Sam is dead. The way that the murder happened was away from the house. He was drowned in a lake, I think, maybe. Can't remember exactly. It's been a while since I saw it, but like I said, when I saw Palm Springs, it reminded me of this movie, and for the right kind of viewer, I think it's going to be the movie to watch. It's also pretty short. The runtime is just over an hour and a half, so I can't really get any farther into the movie without talking about spoilers. So I'll do a short spoiler section, and then I'll come back and kind of wrap it up with my thoughts about the movie overall and my recommendation. But if you're looking to avoid spoilers, skip down to the time down below because the spoilers are about to start right now. Okay, so I will say overall the concept of the movie is unique, I guess, but basically he's living life like Mario, right? There are only 7 people who are involved at any one time. That means that with him gone, he has 5 chances, with the killer being the other person, of getting it right. And he's got to warn everybody, especially his girlfriend, who is obviously the most important person to him, that there is a killer amongst them. But how do you do that? How do you, as someone else, warn everyone? And we get to see that, like, the frustration with that repetition of, like, hop into one person, try to warn them, then the killer gets them. So now you hop to another person and you try to warn everyone else, and then the killer gets them. And there's some weird dynamics, obviously two of these people are sisters and he's dating one of the sisters. So imagine if you saw your sister and they were acting like your boyfriend and very weird on top of it. So in a lot of ways, it's a murder mystery because he's trying to figure out who is the killer and who killed him and what happened to him. And he's also learning things about the people around him, the other people he was there with, that, of course, we don't know everything about our friends, right? Even if we spend a lot of time with them, there may be secrets that we don't know. But he's also, much like Palm Springs, where they wake up in the same place every morning, he is trying to re-experience that day and warn everyone, but he doesn't know where all the actors were at any one time. So a lot of it is spending time to try to get your bearings and who am I and what kind of skills do I have? What can I do? And that can be very frustrating, I can imagine. In the end, though, he identifies the killer, he knows who it is, and he really just wants to get out of there. And he tries to warn everyone, but then you find out like, oh, someone else had a mental health problem before, so of course no one's going to believe them when they come up with this crazy story. And what, is it happening again, baby? Like, what's going on? Like that kind of reaction. But he really just wants to save his girl, and he wants to get her out of there. And he ends up learning things about himself along the way. But it's a short movie, and it's going to be a short review. That's about it. That's all I have for the spoilers. So let's invite everybody back in, and we'll kind of wrap up this movie and talk about my recommendation right now. So I will say that the director and the writer, I think they have a future in this industry. That it was an interesting concept, and the way that it was shot was very well done because we're basically first person most of probably 75% of the time. It's occasionally that we step out and we see that Sam has now taken the body of someone else, and it's that person speaking. But a lot of the time we spend first person, so we hear Sam's voice in his head, and we hear the voice of Sam, and then when we step out, we know, oh, that's not Sam. He's speaking with the voice of this other person. But it was also really confusing. I think I went in blind to this and it just looked like an interesting concept for a movie. It might have been recommended to me. Maybe that's why I watched it. And especially at the beginning of quarantine, it was just like, what content can I absorb? And I think that it got really great reviews from critics and mixed reviews from people. And I completely understand that because I think you really had to be watching closely. You had to follow. I tried to, and still I was confused a lot. And I don't know, it never felt like it was fully wrapped up. It didn't feel like a complete movie. It felt like the first two acts of a movie. And like, you think something else is going to happen. You think there's going to be something else. And there's this like little sliver of a conclusion and we're done. So I have to say I was like really frustrated also at the end of it. Like you feel like, yeah, the story's been wrapped up, but I don't feel like it was wrapped up well. And I don't feel like they did the most with this concept that could have been done. But again, one of the things I said about 7500, it was shot on one location, one house. So with a limited cast. That's kind of what we're looking for in these new age of making movies. And for an independent filmmaker like myself, I really dig that idea. What kind of story can I write in one place where we just shoot the thing? And hey, we kind of can use some scenes more than once. If there's more than one actor there and then later Sam is taking the body of another actor, then great, we can use that scene again. So I think it was well done as being shot. And the concept was it was high concept movie. The execution of all of those things being put together to an actual movie, kind of frustrating, and it fell short. And I know time is precious for all of us. Obviously, I'm running for president, if you haven't heard. So I'm running all the social media for that, at Rob Cheek for Prez. I'm running the website for the campaign. I'm running my own social media, at Robert N. Cheek on all your social networks. And I'm building the website for myself. It's robertncheek.com, where you can find links to everything I do, including these videos and the books that I wrote and all of the projects I'm working on. And I'm also keeping up with the Everyman Movie Review social media, so you can find links for that down below. And of course, the Oh the Anthem podcast, my weekly podcast with my buddy Corey, where we talk about news and politics. I'm still making sure we get one episode out of new content every single week. And with all of that going on, and my real job, my full-time job, there's not a lot of time. So putting all that together, if you're in a similar situation to me, this is probably a skip it. I can't recommend this movie for most movie watchers. It's complicated, it's in-depth, it doesn't explain a lot of the stuff, and even though it's a short runtime, it's just there are other things you could watch. You could basically get through an entire Quibi series at the time that it takes to watch this movie. But for a certain kind of movie watcher, for those who really like high concept sci-fi, who like this idea of like jumping bodies and a little bit of like time loopy kind ofness, the stuff that we had in Palm Springs, although I do think Palm Springs was better done, then you may be super interested in this. And I think also for fans of the horror, like slasher genre, you're really going to dig this. Basically, you get to see the same guy murdered multiple times by a killer, and there's something about that that's just like, all right, take two. It's my second chance to survive getting killed. Nope, gonna get killed. But unless you're like that very limited scope of movie fans and you like those very specific things, probably not going to be the movie for you. And it's probably not worth your time and you should skip it. But what you shouldn't skip is my next review. Everyman Movie Review coming with 2 new episodes a week on Thursday and 1 day in between. So make sure you hit subscribe and the notification bell so that you know when the newest episode is out. We're going to be doing movies fast and furious now. I'm going to be looking for brand new content that's coming out to streaming. And of course, AMC and Regal have announced they're reopening. And I am so excited to go back to the movies. But until next time, make sure to take care of yourselves and each other. In these trying times, it's the most important thing. Have a great week, everybody.